Welcome to Open for Business, the Gallatin Valley's only local business and consumer talk show featuring Tom Egelhoff, the Man Entrepreneur Magazine radio called the leading authority in the United States for doing business in small towns. Here he is, speaker, author, small business consultant, and Mrs. Egelhoff's favorite son, Tom Egelhoff.
All right, welcome everyone. Open for Business. We air every Saturday live from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Mountain Time on AM 1450 KMMS in Bozeman, 1340 KPRK in Livingston, Montana. If you'd like to be a part of the big broadcast, go to kmmsam.com and click Listen Live. The call-in number during the show, 406-522-TALK, 406-522-8255. I'm here, you're here. Let's get the show on the road. All right, thank you very much. 45 degrees outside. It's March 16th, 2013, and 25 minutes before the top of the hour. This is our podcast portion of the show. We do this every week from 11:30 to noon here on kmmsam.com. If you missed any of these and would like to hear them again, I do post them on my website at smalltownmarketing.com, and we also post them on the radio website at kmmsam.com. Today I want to talk about the 6 types of advertising and how to use them, because mistakes in advertising are often costly to small business, and for this reason, many businesses decide either not to advertise at all or to be very conservative in their ads. However, using the right type of advertising with the right message can cut the cost of advertising, I should say, by making it more effective. So not every business will use all 6 types. Which type you use will depend on what your business message is and the end result you wish to accomplish. And I'm not going to cover social media advertising today. That's kind of a podcast in itself, and we will do that down the road, how to use those types. So stay tuned for that coming up on a future show. But anyway, the 6 types of advertising I want to talk about. The first one is your company image, and this is particularly important for new companies that are starting out, because which of the following is more important, the company, its products, or the individuals that are doing it? So in a small town or a small market, this can be a very important question. For example, your insurance agent might be a personal friend. You'll buy your insurance from him or her regardless of the company they represent, just because you know them and you have a relationship with them, and a trusting relationship, I should say. And in another example, you might purchase a lot of goods at a local Walmart or some other store, and because of their message or their low pricing or whatever. So if you're a new company, you may want to begin to establishing the company name first and the products and services later. This also works for company name changes. In the 1980s, I worked with a video chain in San Diego called Video Library, no relation to the one that used to be here in Bozeman. Our advertising strategy was to promote the company name rather than promote the movies we rented. We placed small box ads about 1 inch by 1.5 inches throughout the San Diego paper. We had a little small ad in each part of the paper, and it simply said Video Library, X number of locations. Well, when I started with them in 1980, they had 4 stores, and by 1985, we had 43. So Video Library was the most recognized name in video in San Diego at that time, because we built that name. And I remember when Raiders to the Lost Ark first came out on video. That was one of the biggest movies that was when the video was in its infancy. The TV stations came down to our place to talk to the owner of the stores that we had at that time, and we didn't call them. They knew the name, and that's where they came. So by building the brand name, and when news about that type of industry came out, they came to talk to us. Second type of advertising I want to talk about is name brands. If there's one company in operation today that understands the importance of name brands, it would have to be Procter & Gamble. Tide laundry detergent, far and away the #1 bestseller, has been for several years. And when the dishwasher appeared on the scene, they could have very easily created Tide for dishes, capitalizing on a winning product name. But as we all know, that kind of thinking doesn't work, because there's confusion about a name being used for 2 different two different things. So instead of using the established name Tide, they created a completely new name that became just as strong in dishwashing, Cascade. And of course, Ivory Soap, we all know what that is. When you hear the name alone, you know the product. Kraft, on the other hand, has a bunch of products, but they only have a couple of true winners. Philadelphia cream cheese, for example, has about 70% of the market, but also notice that Kraft name is hardly noticeable on the package. The name they promoted was the Philadelphia brand cream cheese. And the Velveeta brand cheese might be another winner, also Miracle Whip, but Kraft makes jams and jellies, yet Smucker's is number one. Kraft makes their own mayonnaise, but Hellman's is number one. So, you can kind of get the picture of the importance of developing that brand name and keeping the brand name identifiable with the one product. McDonald's has McDonald's, but they also have the Big Mac and the Egg McMuffin and all the other the kids meal, the names that they've built to go with their brand. A brand name also creates a perception in the customer's mind that becomes very strong. It's that strong perception every advertiser strives for. I don't know if you'd buy Pennzoil cake mix or Betty Crocker tires, whatever, but they're good companies. Why wouldn't you buy their products? Well, it seems ridiculous because it flies in the face of the perception that Pennzoil is an oil product, Betty Crocker is baking and whatever, and when we associate brand names with the wrong products, it's almost laughable. So it's dramatically out of place for Pennzoil to be a cake mix, and there's nothing stronger than a good brand name. If you can develop one, put it everywhere you can afford to put it. One of the challenges that we have, of course, advertising a service instead of a product. If I've got a product I can put in your hands and you can examine it and feel it and use it and whatever, it's much easier to sell that product than it is to sell a service that when we're done and the money's passed over, we don't really have anything we can tangibly touch. So advertising services is one of the most difficult types of advertising. You don't have a tangible product you can put in somebody's hand. They can't touch it or feel it or see it or smell it. It must often be explained as well as demonstrated. So one of the best examples of service advertising is carpet cleaners. Come in, they run some machinery over your carpets and leave. Nothing tangible is left behind except clean carpets. So service advertising is most often emotional advertising. Carpet cleaners don't sell clean carpets. They sell health to the infant crawling on the floor. They sell, a more comfortable home for breathing and, not filled with dust and whatever. They sell pride that people can visit a beautiful, clean home. On my website, smalltownmarketing.com, if you go to the sitemap, I have an article, How to Market a Service Rather Than a Product. So it goes into a lot more detail than we are on this podcast. So again, go to my website, smalltownmarketing.com, look for How to Market a Service Rather Than a Product. Business-to-business advertising is another one, and that's what I do. I deal more with businesses than I do with the consumer in my personal business. Many businesses never have the need to deal with the public at all, and for those businesses, advertising in newspaper, radio, TV would be a waste of time and money because you're reaching people that aren't your target market or not your customers. So it's important that you are advertising and spending your advertising dollars reaching the right people at the right time. So you'll find these companies using more direct mail, trade magazines, things like that. For a complete listing of trade magazines, you can go to the library. They have the Encyclopedia of Periodicals. Obviously, you can do searches on the internet as well. There's also a standard rates and data service directory, and these will have listings and rates of trade and industry publications you can advertise in. So check those out. Another important type of advertising is co-op advertising, and co-op advertising is one of the best ways for a small business owner to get the message out. And in this type of advertising, the manufacturer picks up a portion of the cost of the advertising, and they can also supply all the artwork and everything for the ads. They've had the ads developed and personally or professionally designed, and your name is just added in a space that they leave receive for that promotion. There are some pitfalls to be careful of when dealing with co-op advertising, because every company wants their business portrayed in the best possible light. So to that end, they will be very strict about how and where you place your advertising. So before they okay the co-op money, they'll want to approve all the ad copy, the pictures, the size, placement, use of logos, things like that. So if you place an ad without approval, you run the risk of violating one of those guidelines and not getting the money from the company for your ad. The media will choose, in other words, the media that you choose to use the co-op advertising, they'll want to be paid pretty quickly, 30 days at the most, but you may not receive your co-op money for a few months down the road. So make sure that you get the reimbursement procedures in writing and how long it can take to get the money. And if you can live with that, then certainly it's a good way to get your name out there with a known product as the local dealer for Hoover or Ford or whatever it happens to be. An alternative to teaming up with a manufacturer is to team up with another local business. You can share production costs for brochures and other printed material, and you can put each other's coupons in your respective businesses. I mentioned earlier I used to work in the video business, and pizza parlors and video stores were naturals to work together. Not so much anymore because we don't have quite the number of video stores that we did before with all the online things. But there are certain businesses that kind of complement each other. So look for businesses that maybe a yogurt shop and a coffee shop can work together, something like that. Also, another type of advertising that a lot of people use is PSAs, public service announcements. And if your company can sponsor a charity event, PSAs are a great way to promote your company in a positive light. Most media are required by licensing agreements to provide a certain amount of time or space for the good of their local communities. We do that here at KMMS. We're required by the federal communications to provide nonprofits with time on our station. So we have community calendars. We have, we put PSAs in a rotating basis throughout the day. Some of the downsides, you may not see your ad on American Idol or some other primetime shows, but PSAs are often placed in filler times. I don't want to paint everyone with a broad brush here, but some media are better than others. Just because you request a PSA doesn't mean you'll get it. They have a limited amount of space and time for these, and as I say, that's why we rotate them, that over time you're going to be here, your ad is going to be heard in most time slots, but just be aware that it's not going to be run as a regular paid commercial. You might get a break if you're currently advertising in the media of choice. Of course, that always helps. We want to take care of our advertisers. They are the reason that we're on the air, so it might also help if your organization buys a small amount of time or space to run with your PSAs. And that's what Mike and I are doing. We're going to buy radio advertising here on KMMS at XL Country for our seminar coming up March 26th over in Livingston and Gardner, and we will also run some PSAs along with that. So look for those coming up in the next few days. Last word on types of advertising. The type of message in your target market will often dictate which type of advertising to use. So some companies will use more than one. Some will use several depending on the situation, but let's also keep in mind the pros and cons of advertising. And there are two basic advantages to advertising. One is the best way to get the message out about a new or existing product or service. And two, it can actually lower the cost of a product to the consumer by increasing sales, which can result in reduced production costs. So the more we make, the more we buy, the more discounts are available because of our larger purchasing power. Advertising certainly has a benefit not only to the business, but to the consumer. Bad side of advertising, it can create an artificial need for unnecessary products and services. Every Christmas, we've got a toy that nobody has in stock, Tickle Me Elmo or the Furby or Star Wars or whatever it is. But the point is to keep an eye on the message you want your target market to receive, And if you can, test some of the 6 types of advertising with various offers and messages. Find the type that works for you and work it. Now, coming up not coming up, last Wednesday, I did a seminar at the local library and was happy to see a lot of folks turn out for that. Met a lot of great listeners that support the show, and we certainly thank you for that. Two of the things that I covered in that seminar were my 2 rules of advertising, and I'll share them with you here as our podcast winds down. The first rule of advertising is that when emotion and logic come in conflict, emotion always wins. We buy things based on emotional. We buy things based on how they make us feel. If you don't believe that, you can take me down to the grocery store and show me the dead bird cat food. It just doesn't work that way. Yeah, I asked in my seminar how many people bought a CD to get one song, and there's always a show of hands. And I'm thinking to myself, one song, $12.99, 11 free. I like it. So what we do is we make an emotional decision, and then we'll create a logical argument to support it. Now, the second rule of advertising is very simple. You never advertise anywhere, unless there is at least a 75% expectation that the advertising is going to produce more than it costs. Advertising must be an investment. It can never, ever be an expense. So when you select your type of advertising, a lot of thought goes into it. Your target market, we've got to make sure that we get it to the right people. We've got to have the right message, an emotional message that is going to affect how that customer feels. And then, of course, there's price, and there is the cost to reach that customer and the return on the investment of that advertising. How many people are going to see it? How many people are going to react to it? How many people are going to come into the store? And when you think about advertising, if I came into your business and for every dollar I gave you, or every dollar you gave me, rather, I gave you a 20, how often would you want to see me? And that's what advertising is supposed to do. It's supposed to turn dollar bills into 20s or 40s or 60s or hundreds. And if it does that, then it pays for itself and the business is off and running. So but putting together that first advertising budget is the hard part. Assembling the money, and also deciding what are you going to advertise, where are you going to advertise, and how are you going to advertise, and what's the message going to be. So keep some of these advertising types in mind and use them. Again, if you're trying to build, I'll review them. We have the company image. If you're trying to build your company image, building a name brand. If you're an inventor and you want to invent the next, a vice grip, whatever. If you're building that brand name. If you're advertising a service rather than a product, remember you're selling the intangibles, the emotion of that product or service. If you're doing business to business, then you're not dealing with the public at all. So the way you reach those people is entirely different than it might be if you're advertising in the more conventional ways. Co-op advertising, again, check with your suppliers and see if they have co-op advertising available, how much they will pay, what they do, what they expect you to do, how often, when do you get paid. All of those things are critically important in the use of co-op advertising. Also, PSAs. Most business owners have a pet project or a pet charity or something like that. If they're fundraisers coming up or something like that, certainly attaching your name to a PSA as a supporter of that charity or that civic group certainly is a good way to get your business out there and expose it to a lot of people. So keep in mind that advertising is a scary business. It certainly isn't something for the faint of heart. And if you've never done it before, it's particularly daunting because you may think, well, maybe I'll run a newspaper ad. Well, before you do that, and there's nothing wrong with a newspaper ad, but before you do that, ask yourself, why? Why am I running a newspaper ad? What will that fall into my 75% expectation of the ad cost producing more than it costs? Because that's the critical question you have to ask yourself. If I'm going to spend this dollar, Is it going to turn into a 20 somewhere else? And that's the critical question to ask, because if you're not confident that it will, don't do it, until you're sure, until you've done your homework. One of the things that I suggest, score.org, SCORE.org. We have 1,000 counselors across the country that have worked in various industries. You can go to score.org, put in a keyword, it'll pull up a whole bunch of names and their qualifications, and they will help you for free. You can email them with your questions. How much did you spend on advertising? Where'd you advertise? Can you send me, copies of your brochures or flyers or business cards or whatever you use to get the message out, so that I can see what might work in here in Bozeman or Livingston or Manhattan or Three Forks or Gardner or wherever you are. Because every town is different. Every town has its own little idiosyncrasies. Each town has its own ways of communicating. So what works in Belgrade might not work in Bozeman, and it might not work in Livingston. So it's a critical situation to, when you're going to spend some bucks to get your name out there, it's very important that that works. If I can help you at all, I absolutely will. You can email me at radiotommontana.com. I'll be happy to sit down with you, have coffee, talk about your business, talk about what you're planning in advertising, give you whatever advice I can, help you any way that I can. So we're happy to be here, happy to do these podcasts for you. Again, we're here every Saturday from 11 to 11:30 doing these podcasts online. You can find them at kmsam.com. You can also find them on my website at smalltownmarketing.com.